Bolstered by an extremely foot-friendly design, the Softstar Switchback looks to be the flagship minimalist hiking boot. With its wide toe box zero-drop design and a relatively minimal and flexible stack height profile, it seems to deliver pretty well on those promises, which, considering the hefty $250+ price point, is a very important promise to deliver on. Built on a solid Vibram outsole and touted as almost indestructible on the Softstar website, will our first impressions of this boot reflect any of the hype that holds it up? Let's find out. Hey folks, I'm glad you're here. My name is Chris. This is the Sons of Sever YouTube channel where there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad gear. As was mentioned in the intro, my brother Eric and I are going to be talking about the Softstar Switchback, and this is going to be our initial impressions of the boot. We haven't had it for very long and we've only taken it on a couple of hikes, so there will be an eventual in-depth review of this boot somewhere down the line after it's seen some winter conditions and we can really give our full opinion on this boot. If you're interested in seeing that video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you will be alerted when that video goes live. But for now, let's pass things over to Eric to talk about his initial impressions of the Softstar Switchback.
Okay, starting off with my first impressions of the boot, we'll talk about some good things here. And the first one is just the company itself and what they are doing. We love that they are a USA handmade brand. That is very rare in the barefoot shoe space. So these are being made by hand in Oregon, and they're leather products as well. So we really like the materials that we're using. We like that they're based here in the US and that they're making these things by hand. That's really cool. And I really love the construction method that these have been made with. So if you look there, you can see that this is a stitch down construction. So it's a lot like Jim Green, in that the upper has been sewn to this midsole and then the outsole gets glued to that midsole. So that makes it durable and it also makes it repairable. If this outsole ever craps out on you, you can take it to a cobbler, peel it off and glue on another one. So I love the way that this thing has been made. Now when you're thinking of a barefoot boot, I think this hits all the marks of the ideal barefoot boot. The stack height on it is 12 millimeters, so there's a 6 millimeter outsole, the 6 millimeter midsole, and then there's the insole. It's a merino wool insole, and it's got to be probably 2 to 3 millimeters. So you're looking at like 14 to 15 millimeters of stack height overall, which for a hiking boot, I think is just about perfect, to be honest. It's still very flexible, but it provides enough protection under your feet that you can go and do some really long and some really hard hikes with it. It also has a very, very wide toe box. Now that's going to put me into talking about some of the negative first impressions that I had with it as I was walking downhill with this one. For my feet specifically, there's maybe a little bit too much room and I was kind of slipping around in the boot. I could have tied the laces tighter, and I'm definitely going to try that next time because that will definitely help with it. But there's so much room in this toe box that the people with the widest feet are going to be very, very happy with it. And then this pull tab really isn't functional. I can't get my finger in there to really be very helpful, so I wish that that pull tab could have been a little bit bigger. There's also the price. They come in at $250, so that's definitely on the higher end of the barefoot boot market, but I think that you get what you're paying for. So again, with the way that it's been built, it's durable, it's repairable, you know, it's a handmade leather product, so I think the price is justified there. It is just a little bit more than what we're used to. But besides that, overall, really, really good first impressions of the Softstar Switchback. Again, I like how it's being made, where it's being made. I like the barefoot attributes that it has. It performed really well on the trail for me. There's no break-in time needed with it whatsoever. I do wish that this pull tab was more functional. And for my foot specifically, there might just be a little bit too much room in the toe box. Let's send it over to Chris now so that he can talk about his first impressions of the boot.
Getting into my initial impressions of the Switchback, I'm going to start with a handful of things that I like about this thing so far, and then I've got one thing I don't like so much that I'm going to add in at the end. So starting with the first thing that I really like about it, it's how wide the toe box is. Now, this may or may not add to how goofy a lot of people think that this boot looks, including Eric and I, but when it comes to the performance of this toe box, it is so nice. It's a little bit of a dream for me. I love how much my toes can splay out. I can very comfortably wear toe spacers with this, and it just gives an added amount of comfort to this boot that you just don't see a lot of times in the hiking market. The next thing that I want to key in on is the mixture of ground feel and flexibility that this thing has, even though it's got a relatively hefty stack height. My estimation is 17 millimeters overall. It's 12 millimeters between the outsole and the midsole. Each of those are 6. The insole in this thing is pretty hefty. Obviously, I can take that out if I want to, but I actually really like the level of comfort that I have in this thing as it comes. But even with that 17-ish estimated millimeters, this thing bends and flexes really, really nice. Even rolls up. I did take multiple pairs of shoes with me on one of the hikes that I did, and so I did have to switch out of these and pack them, and they packed down really nicely because of that flexibility. But then moving into the ground feel, the fact that as I'm walking over rocks and roots, they're not going to hurt my feet, but I can tell that they're there, and the boot is allowing my foot to translate that to the rest of my body. The rest of my body is then able to react to the ground that I'm walking over. So I am impressed with the amount of protection but ground feel that this sole allows, along with that flexibility. I think that's a really cool combination. I want to key in on the Vibram outsole that we have on this thing. It just performs. It does a really good job. I don't know if it's a mixture of what it's made of, because the rubber does feel relatively soft. It doesn't look like I've chewed through it at all so far. I know that there have been some Vibram outsoles that I have eaten through pretty badly. This one seems to be holding up pretty well, and the traction on it is just great. Not only has it performed well on the dry ground that we have here in the summer in Utah, but taking it onto slippery rocks. I actually did a fun little test here where I found a slanted rock that was constantly getting pelted by river water, and I stepped on that thing just to see if this thing would grip it, and it was doing a pretty good job, better than a lot of other outsoles would do. We just need this thing to experience snow and see how it grips in those situations, and then we'll have a more well-rounded view of how this outsole really performs. I want to end my first impressions by talking about the one downside that I have with this guy so far. Eric and I both don't like the way that it looks, but even more for me is the fact that it's not waterproof. It is water resistant. I knew that going into one of these hikes that ends in a waterfall, and I decided I was going to dunk it anyway and see how good that water resistance was. It was pretty good. It lasted about 10 seconds or so before I started to feel my socks getting soaked. And what I will say is that as I was rock hopping in that creek, just rock to rock, occasionally having to step in the water to safely transition from one foothold to the next, it had no issues with that. My feet didn't get wet during the rock hopping process at all. My feet only got wet when I just stood still in fairly high moving water. That's one thing that I would love to see in a future Switchback, if Softstar should ever decide to do it, would be a fully waterproof membrane. I think that would take this thing above and beyond as far as the performance goes. Again, we don't love how this thing looks. I actually don't mind so much this specific version with their super fabric or whatever it's called, but I think if it was waterproof, it would outperform a lot of boots we've worked with, and that's saying a lot. I want to give kind of my final opinion of my initial impressions of the Switchback so far. I think this thing's pretty solid, honestly. It seems rugged. It is very barefoot, which I appreciate, but it's not too barefoot. My foot feels protected and comfortable and connected in this thing, which is a really cool combination of things to feel in a barefoot boot. Again, would love to see a waterproof version in the future, but if it performs well in snow, I think this thing's going to be really solid and really well-rounded. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see our eventual in-depth review of the Softstar Switchback. But for now, that is my opinion of the boot so far. Folks, if you like this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. All those things really help the channel out. If you're interested in any of the products that we talked about in this video, there will be links to them down in the description. If we have discount codes for any of those companies, they will be featured with the links. If you want to get more content from us, there are 3 different places you can get it. The first one is Patreon, where for $1 a month, you can get exclusive behind-the-scenes content we don't post anywhere else. If you want to be most up-to-date with what we are working on, make sure to follow us on Instagram, where we are constantly posting unboxing videos. Go follow us on Strava if you're interested in seeing mini reviews in real time of the products we're using and what we're using them for. Strava allows you to track and post about your different activities. We track and post about our runs, trail runs, hikes, paddleboarding, and weightlifting, and we do little mini reviews on the products we are using during those activities. Go follow us there, and we will follow you back. We appreciate your view, and as always, we will catch you in the mountains.